What is the first step in the marketing research process? I've started 16 companies, I've worked with hundreds. I'm going to tell you the entrepreneurial approach. What are the top 3 things you have to do when you're looking at the marketing process? As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights. All right, so when you're thinking about marketing research, I got to tell you, I've spent more money. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with marketing firms. And candidly, it frustrates the crap out of me because I've seen very, very little return on that. It's been my experience, so part of this is my brain damage, in that if you're the owner of the business, you got to take control of this. You have to understand this. And then you can work with people. There's great marketing people out there, but you have to be very, very clear on what the expectations are, how you're tracking it for sex and things like that. So to start, you need to figure out for that marketing research process, there's 2 areas, and it's sort of chicken and the egg. So I'm going to start with the idea that if you already have existing customers, let's go through and do an assessment of who they are. And I want you to look at it in 3 ways. The demographic, who are they? The geographic, where are they? And the psychographic, what is it they value? Traditionally, most businesses, most smaller businesses, they're going to get 80% of the revenue from 20% of their people, or at least maybe 80% of their net profit. I should say 80% of the net profit from the top 20% of their clients. That's who we want to figure out. And so from a demographic standpoint, the idea is who are they? And the more you can narrow that down, the better. And this isn't where, it's not a woke thing. It's just a requirement thing for your business. Let's figure out who these people are. Let's figure out their gender. Let's figure out their age. If there happens to be some sort of race or ethnicity around it, that's okay. That's part of the game. Don't be afraid of owning that and figuring out who it is. If it's businesses, you're B2B, is there a certain title? But let's be as clear as we can to name that person and try and create an avatar, maybe a male and a female avatar that are, okay, this is Joe and Jane, and Joe is a 45-year-old business owner who does what, boom, boom, boom. And this way we start knowing who it is. This is going to make it a little clearer and easier for our next step. So that's the demographic. The geographic is pretty simple. Depending on the type of business you are, where are these people? Now, if you're a virtual business, you may be able to say, well, you know what? I actually don't do as well in some of the bigger cities because there's more competition in those areas. But because I figured out the virtual component, I can do this in different areas. You're going to be able to market in different ways, but we're starting with that initial market analysis and the research process, that market research. So this will help you define, again, where are they? Identifying that as much as possible works. In some cases, if you're, who knows what your business may be, if it's, a residential retail kind of thing, you may say, I do really well with this size and demographic home. So once we start figuring out I do well, in a 3,200 square foot home that's worth $800,000 in this general region, great. Let's figure out, and maybe it was built in this era. But the more specific you can get, the better you're going to be. Lastly is going to be the psychographic. And this is one of the important pieces, and it's kind of hard to grasp sometimes. But the psychographic is, what is it these people value? If you look back at those best customers, what were the things that they really loved about you? Is it you were the cheapest? Is it they loved your customer care? Is it you were fast? Is it you guaranteed your work? What are those things? But really try and identify what are those motivators and really figure out what that is. Because once you start to define who your ideal target is, the demographic, the geographic, and the psychographic, this is going to be your first step. So we start with this, and that's going to be your very first one. Now the second of our 3 steps we'll talk about today is to go through and identify and document what are the outcomes you're providing. Most people, probably 90% of small businesses, screw up their marketing because what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell the features and benefits. They're trying to say, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is why we do it, this kind of thing. Nobody cares. They kind of care. But initially, what are the outcomes you are providing? And this is where I'm going to encourage you to go through and list out, if your service, let's say your service is $1,000, go through and list out what are 50 outcomes that are worth over $5,000. Now, I went through this process myself for the work that I do as a strategic advisor and facilitator. And I went through and I listed out, okay, so if I do this and I'm working one-on-one with CEO, what are the things that I can help them avoid? Well, I can help them avoid a heart attack, getting a divorce, boom, boom, boom. And so holy smokes. And I thought this would be hard, but I came up with a list of 50 things, just like that. It's well, every one of these things is worth over 100 grand. The people I work with would gladly pay 100 grand for this. The outcomes are what we're looking for. So when you start to identify what are the outcomes we're driving, this helps. So a very, very simple example is if I'm really hungry, I want to know, do you have bread and is it going to make me feel better? I'm not going to take away my hunger. So if you say we've got, but if you want to sit there and tell me about the artisan wheat and how it's ground in a stone mortar and how you use a wood-baked oven, and I don't care. I want to know, is the bread going to be good and solve my problem? So this is where the more you can focus on what are the outcomes you're providing, you're helping solve these problems, then you present those outcomes to the right people you present the outcomes you're providing in front of the people you've defined are your ideal target market. And then when they come to you and say, I want that, how does this work? Well, then you set the hook and we can say fish on. So the first thing is really defining who your ideal customer is. The second thing is identifying and defining clearly what are the outcomes you're providing. And then lastly, figure out where they live. It sounds crazy, but fish where the fish are. If we know that we're going after a certain target market of people, let's figure out where that is. We don't want to go into the red oceans. If you're targeting 1%ers in certain areas, how can you advertise at the country club? I don't know. I've known people who did much better advertising in a church bulletin than they did advertising on the radio. Sometimes radio, sometimes direct mail. And actually direct mail, oddly, can be very, very successful if you do it in the right ways. But start figuring out where are these people. I would much rather and encourage you highly to go out and figure out how to get in front of these people and then really refine your messaging with this. But if you're genuinely trying to figure out, hey, how can we, what's the first step in that marketing research? I would start with these 3 things. After this, then you're going to be able to build A/B process and all these other tests, how we test these things. But first is who are they? Second, what are the outcomes you're providing? And then third, where can you find them? So ideally, you found some value in this. And we offer a whole course, Aspiring Solopreneur, on how you can safely transition into the life of your dreams. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out, connect, subscribe, and share it. But very much appreciate you investing the time to watch this. Keep smiling.